So it looks like 10:50 just turned on my clock here, ladies. So I propose that we kick off this session today, which is really exciting. It's a great conversation that we're going to be digging into today. But for everybody who has joined us or is going to be joining us or going to be listening to this recording later, my name is Dawson, and I'm going to be helping to moderate today's conversation about the winter sports industry and how it's tackling climate change through the adoption of various different innovative sustainability initiatives. I'm a senior consultant at VEIC. We're a Vermont-based, nonprofit, mission-driven organization that's focused on reducing greenhouse gases by becoming a leader in decarbonization. And I am a proud member of a 300-plus team of experts. It's kind of crazy to think that there's that many of us that focus on energy efficiency, building decarbonization strategies, and transportation electrification. I work specifically in energy management. That's the business area that works directly with utilities, with businesses, and with the design community to help them implement their efficiency projects, help them meet their carbon goals, and help them reduce their overall energy use. But VEIC as an organization also provides a wealth of other different services, both technical and consultative services to states and governments, and also to customers to do things such as drive the adoption of electric vehicles for public use and for fleets, or to help increase customer and market education and awareness campaigns. We work across the US, but for those of you who are listening from Vermont, you may be more familiar with VEIC as the entity that actually administers Efficiency Vermont, your energy efficiency utility. Now, when VEIC was asked to come and speak at the Sea Change conference, we were really excited because we naturally saw this was a great opportunity to be able to highlight some of the efforts that the businesses that we have been working with over the last couple of years in the efficiency realm, as well as to bring forward and highlight and recognize some of the efforts of other businesses around the world, and to ask them to share their insights about what they've specifically been doing to address greenhouse gases and what specific initiatives they've taken internally to reduce their carbon footprint. So I'm really delighted to be joined by three amazing women that are on the screen with me right now from both the West Coast, Utah, East Coast, Vermont, got my little party going here, as well as France and Europe. So just a quick introduction to everybody. Laura Schaffer. She's Director of Corporate Responsibility for POWDR, which is an adventure lifestyle company. I love that saying. I want to work there. They manage ski resorts across the US, and she's based in Utah and is currently enjoying some new spring flurries of snow as we speak. Judy Geer and myself are obviously both based in Vermont. And Judy Geer, for those of you who aren't familiar, is not only is she, I should say, a former Olympian, she's also the co-owner of Concept 2, all those wonderful machines that help you keep fit for Nordic skiing, biking, and other such things. And she's also the administrator of the nonprofit, the Craftsbury Outdoor Center, which is a phenomenal Nordic center based in Vermont's Northeast Kingdom. And not to leave anybody to the last, but maybe the best to last, Marie-Laure, Piednoir, who is the Global Sustainability Program Manager for Salomon. And Salomon, hopefully, is a name that everybody recognizes because it's the gear that we wear when we go to the mountains. They're a phenomenal global apparel and retail manufacturer, and I'm really pleased that she's able to join us from France. So I've got three amazing women. You've probably guessed, that they represent, an amazing, massive, female climate innovation, engineering prowess, and other things. They also happen to be amazing winter and summer sports athletes that have a few Olympic ties, between all of them. But the purpose of today's conversation is actually going to be, talking about their firsthand experience that they've had, the challenges, the successes, and the market barriers to integrating some of these, sustainability activities within their businesses. So I'm super excited to have everybody with me today so we can learn a little bit more about what actions they've been doing. But I always like to say, since we are all athletes, and we talked about this a lot beforehand, all athletes need a good warm-up. So to get things started and to get us all warmed up, I'm going to do a couple of quick fire round questions, and you can just jump in, answer them, whatever order you want. There's not going to be any prizes at the end of this one, but it'll be a little bit fun. So, okay, first one. It's a real quick, easy one. Winter sport focus. Nordic, Alpine, both. Who wants to go first?
Nordic.
Okay, who else?
Nordic as well.
Alpine, telly, and snowboard, but I have
not yet
gone to the Nordic route.
I didn't even have those combinations in there. I'll say like all of the above.
Everything but Nordic.
All of them. Who can't love anything that's on snow? I mean, that's the most important thing. Maple on snow as well. I could have put that one in there. When are you most inspired? Dawn or dusk?
Morning, all the way.
Yeah, morning.
Evening.
Oh, this
Evening?
is good. This works with our schedules then.
There you go. It worked really well. Morning. I'm a morning person. It's when you get all the best creative thinking done. And I think, one thing we were joking about in my family is like, what do you always carry in your pocket when you go outside?
Snacks for kids. Annie's gummies are critical to success for the ski day with the 2-year-old.
Definitely. Bribery.
Yes.
I mean, I sort of hate to say that I usually carry my phone, but it's not so much so that I can take a call as like take a picture of how beautiful it is or something like that.
Yep.
Yeah, that's exactly what I would say, like food and phone.
Food and phone. Chocolate.
And pictures.
I'll be very specific. Chocolate, chocolate, chocolate. Nothing but yes, bribery. And then last one is going to finish the sentence for me. Never underestimate the power of...
Women, yeah.
Caring about something. People who care.
Small dedicated
And
group of women who care. I'll string it all together for you there.
And kids, I want to say kids. There's something very powerful about all the kids involved in all of our programs. I feel like they pull their parents along and they get things. And I think there's just a lot of power there. It always makes me happy to see it.
Yeah. I think that's a wonderful note to finish on, just that little session there, Judy, because like a lot of the things that we've been talking about previously, as we're thinking about tackling greenhouse gases, within our own industries is, why are we doing it? Like what is driving us to do that? And I'd be really, interested, in talking, if you could briefly provide, example of, like how you got into this, field. Like personally, I mean, you're all sustainable, advocates, and you're all working in this area, but like what drew you to it? What drew you to the winter sports, and potentially what drew you into like really this focus on sustainability? Who wants to go?
I can start. I think, I was an Olympian, not in skiing, but in rowing. And so you might wonder how I got drawn into, winter sports. And I think it's because I lived in Vermont, and then you can't row in the winter because the lakes are frozen. And so you ski. And then when my husband and I had kids, we didn't want to force them to row, and we all got into skiing, and they all loved skiing and turned into lifelong skiers. We're also engineers. And so I think the whole thing comes together with loving outdoor sports and being engineers and seeing the challenges. And so when we started the Outdoor Center, which is a nonprofit and has a mission, we wanted the mission to include not just, sports, outdoor sports, participation, access, all that, but we wanted it to be about sustainable practices and good stewardship of the land.
Yeah. I feel like we all, like a lot of us are drawn to organizations that share our common vision, so these mission alignments are really, really important. Is that something that you see, Laura, as well with POWDR?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so I feel like the luckiest person in the world to be able to work in the position that I'm in because of those value alignments, right? I mean, that was a huge deciding factor for me to land at POWDR. And it all started when I grew up moving all over the place, including, the Northeast and France and the Midwest, but I never lived in the big mountains. And so I ended up moving out to Utah after I graduated from college to work for the Olympics, thinking that I would live here for just a couple of years and then move on. And I got totally sucked in and really lucked out to land a job in the marketing department at Snowbird. And when I was there, I just built this great appreciation for what makes a ski resort tick, what makes the ski industry tick. And I saw this huge opportunity for the industry as a whole to take on a slightly different business model, where it was one that really took into account the community that it was in and the land that it was on. And this was mid 2000s. So this was a funny time in the industry when it was like you couldn't say the words global warming because there was a weird argument that if you did, then people wouldn't come ski or something, you know. So I felt like there was huge opportunity there. So I ended up going to business school to sort of marry the sustainability practice with the business fundamentals. And then through Mountain Hardware first, I ended up then at POWDR, where I, you know, get to do that work that I was sort of visioning back in the mid 2000s, and work alongside, you know, people both within POWDR and throughout the industry who want to do exactly the same. And so just like you say, I mean, for us, you know, it's like our commitment to play forever is this core principle that informs our long-term vision, and that value alignment for not only me, but for so many of our employees and for our customers really is a huge driver behind what we're doing and why it matters. So absolutely.
Yeah, I was thinking of one of my favorite quotes, I think, from the CEO of Salomon, said that you can't play without a playground. So, you know, like having companies that are specifically focused on ensuring that the playgrounds that we seek, you know, are protected, you know, and are supported is incredibly important. So it's wonderful that you're able to find a career that allowed you to bring those core elements together. I mean, Salomon, Marie-Laure, I mean, who wouldn't want to work at Salomon and sustainability right now? I mean, you guys are absolutely rocking it, but how did you end up there?
Yeah, I mean, as Laura, I feel incredibly lucky to be here. It's really the golden triangle to be working for a great company with great values and also in this area, because we have the luck that Salomon is located in Annecy, close to the Alps. So that's really, really cool. And what drew me there, I've always wanted to work in sustainability, but I would say back in my school years, it was not so easy to have a compass to know how to work it out professionally. It was more on my personal values and personal life, how I could really activate that. And somehow I got the chance to take a graduation in sustainability in the course of my career, and then move towards these activities. And that was really, really a great opportunity that Salomon opened the position just at the time that we wanted to go for family reasons up in the mountains. But as anyone, I've been really closely connected to nature, and that's also why I would say it's really a basic conviction that drew me there. And at Salomon, we know that the winter sports industry is really at the forefront of climate change, so that's really a luck to be able to be in a position where we can actually act on the products, but also beyond by connecting with and sharing with the rest of the industry.
I think it's, you know, again, you know, just thinking through some of the comments, Marie, that you were mentioning, and Laura, about, you know, what industry is actually doing right now, what makes it tick, you know, what are some of the key activities, you know, that they're actually taking to, you know, put their money where their mouth is, to actually invest in various different activities. You know, one of the key things I always feel, you know, is important is, you know, truly getting behind, you know, an organizational or a corporate goal. I'd be curious, like, you know, if, you know, whether it's an organizational wide commitment or whether it's a personal commitment. Judy, I'm thinking for you, you know, like, what are some of the things that your organizations, or what are you striving to do as it relates to reducing your own greenhouse gas emissions or your own climate goals? Judy, you're on mute right now.
Organization wide, because it is our mission. And, you know, one of the goals in having the mission be both sport and sustainability and stewardship was that everyone at the center is exposed to all those things. So you don't, you know, hopefully you don't just come to ski, but you also see what we're doing in terms of sustainability too. So what are we doing? You know, we've been gradually retrofitting and adding buildings to an old campus, and you know, we have a new net zero lodge, and we've, you know, added insulation to the roof of an old building, and we have a pretty cool district heating system that uses waste heat from our snowmaking generator and some solar and some heat pumps and a real high efficiency wood boiler. So we're trying to really just sort of push the envelope. We've also used heat pumps in other places, so we're not going strictly just with one technology, but we're trying a number of them to see which ones we think work best in different areas. So you know, we also have at an Olympic development program called the Green Racing Project. And this is for skiing, biathlon, rowing, and running. And those athletes help with the mission. So a piece of them training at the center is also helping with the mission and being involved in activities that, whether it's helping design the buildings or, dealing with designing a better composting system or educational materials around the composting toilets and the heating systems and things like that. So it ends up being really a lot of people at the center who are involved and get it.
And it sounds like it's a continuous improvement effort as well, because I know that I think when you purchased Craftsbury Outdoor Center and first turned it into that nonprofit, the goal initially was to get off fossil fuels. I think it was by 2012 or something like that. And now it's, what are those incremental steps that you have to keep on taking to keep us moving forward? So
it's definitely incremental. You know, things don't happen immediately. We didn't quite make 2012. It took us another couple of years. And then that didn't include some of the other buildings around the fringes, you know, so it is an ongoing process. And, you know, it's never really going to be done. And sometimes I feel like we aren't doing enough because we haven't done it all. And yet I think it's important that one just try. You know, you have to keep pushing the envelope. You have to keep doing more things and figuring out what the best systems are right now to make things better.
Yeah, I agree completely. And I'm, you know, obviously, you know, with Judy, for you have, you know, like one center, the Nordic Center, you know, Laura, I'm curious, I mean, you manage, you know, a number of resorts. I can't remember quite the number that you have, but how do you do that? I mean, you know, you have, what are some of POWDR's like core goals, and how do you make sure that those are addressed at each of those individual places that you support?
Yeah, well, so for context, you know, we're in a pretty fortunate position at POWDR because this respect for the environment has always been in our DNA. And that's because it comes from our founder, John Cumming. You know, he was made who he was in the mountains, right? And he feels like nature has this great power over the soul, and he wants people in the future to be able to have that. And so back in the mid 2000s I was talking about earlier, when he realized that climate change is real and wasn't going away, he kicked into gear. And so he brought the first chief sustainability officer into the ski industry. Together, they commissioned a study called Save Our Snow, which was one of the first studies of the impact of climate change on the ski industry. And the results, you know, some of you guys might know them. The results were not pretty, right? We were talking 50% of the snowpack and 50% of the length of the season by as early as 2050. And, you know, it wasn't responded necessarily too well, like it wasn't responded too well to, but what it was a real catalyst, both for us within POWDR and for the industry as a whole. And so over the course of the next 10 years, from 2006 to 2016, POWDR invested about $7 million in carbon reduction initiatives. And that was through renewables, through efficiency projects, a lot of the low-hanging fruit, HVAC upgrades, LED retrofits, low-E snowmaking, that sort of thing, and reduced our portfolio's carbon footprint at the time by 49% through just those very through low-hanging fruit that was out there. But then that really brought us to this crossroads where we understood that being a responsible steward isn't simply just taking actions internally and simply a project here and there. What we really wanted to influence was a full cultural shift, right? And so for us, then that meant focusing on two things. One of them was this development of Play Forever, which is our commitment to protect the environment and support our communities. And the other was getting more data, right? And so I give you this context because that's really where our focus has been over the last few years and where we plan on really focusing moving forward. The Play Forever commitment was really important to us because we felt that gave this area of sort of detailed science, nitty-gritty work that we're all in, it gave people a way to connect to it without with it being accessible. So it gave our employees and our guests a way to connect and care about keeping these places around that we love. And then the data for us was doing a greenhouse gas inventory for the full portfolio for the first time with the new portfolio. And in doing that, that enabled us to develop a climate action plan that focuses on renewable energy, energy efficiency, and electrifying our operations. And so within those, we have goals, we have internal goals that we use as beacons to work toward. And then externally, we communicate those wins that we have along the way. So we celebrate those successes, and that hope is so we can inspire others to come along with us too.
Music to my ears, Laura. So within energy management, we always say, the first most important thing you need to do is set goals, but then to ensure that those goals, are achieved, you need to put in place those clearly defined steps that support actions and have milestones associated with them.
Yeah.
And
that's hard, right?
It's hard.
And it's not easy to do that. And so it's definitely an undertaking to do it, but without that, you're never going to get to the goals.
Yeah. And you need to have that underpinning of, robust data and analysis to ensure that you can see how far you're getting along there. I know that, I did a little bit of sleuth digging around of Salomon, and Marie-Laure, I know that, Salomon itself, a lot of its, GHG initiatives, they are customer facing, they are talking about, what you're doing to help reduce overall, carbon footprint of your gear, but, your buildings have also been, a focus too. And I noticed that, you are ISO 14001 and 50001 certified, which, speaks very much to what Laura was explaining POWDR is doing, is putting in place these, overarching global commitments and goals with the incremental steps necessary to help you manage energy better. And obviously, through managing energy, being able to reduce your own carbon footprint. But talking more, Marie-Laure, about the customer and engaging the customers, we have, within the ski industry, obviously, a business need to get revenue in, and that revenue is driven by either skiers on the slopes or by people purchasing our gear. How are you using your position to help advance the sustainability message to your customers?
It's true that, we set our overall goal for reducing our GHG emissions, and it really relies around working better on our own operations, on energy efficiency, on reaching carbon neutrality for our headquarters, which is an emblematic part of our work. But there is also the work on the material sourcing, because if you look at the whole pie of emissions, it's also lying a lot in the supply chain. And I would say if you put it in perspective even further, like you are saying, Zoe, the consumer facing side is super important, because if we really look at the numbers, and I was discussing recently with a chemist company that is providing us with some materials, they have I don't know, maybe 1,000 more emission than we do, and that's already a lot for us, that the emission that we emit. But when we compare it to this company, it's really a lot more. And so that made us think how we can actually act on climate. It's both on what we do, what we master, but it's also how we can engage the consumer and the broader community into changing their practices. And also, we are really a community company with a lot of athletes, strong community, and that's really this sense of community that has been the foundation of Salomon. And we're really thinking that communication around climate change, around sustainability challenges, is going to bring, as well as our own actions, emission reduction somehow. Even I know it's really more difficult to quantify all these parts, but given the wonderful athletes that we have here at Salomon that are advocating sustainability and climate change actions on their personal lives, and all the power that we have here, there is a lot to do, actually. And consumers are really, really into it, and they are listening to whatever we want to say. So we really have to throw messages and shape the discussion together.
Yeah, no, I'm not in marketing or communication, but, I recognize this is a multi-million-dollar business that spends, an awful lot of time and effort in research and ensuring that you're connecting your customers with the right message to help support, this very, very important action. So, I think, we all need to be engaging our customers more and leveraging, coming back again, Laura, to your point, leveraging the data and the insights so that they're able to make decisions, in an informed manner. Because, I think we were joking, we all have kids, and Judy, your grandmom as well. And, a lot of this research is saying, what we can attest to is that, all of this younger generation, they're incredibly passionate about environmental and social justice issues. So we need to be informing them, with information, that they can use, and encouraging them to be the better citizens that we have. But I kind of want to bring it back a little bit, because, there is this inherent contradiction within the winter sports industry where, like the winter sports industry needs winter to exist for the businesses to be profitable and to exist. Yet, as an industry, everything that we do, creates greenhouse gases. And Laura, I mean, both you and Judy, you started to touch a little bit on like some of the things that you've been looking to actually reduce your overall energy use at resorts, and within your equipment. But I'd be curious if you could dig a little bit further, maybe on some of the actual energy savings or carbon savings that you've seen as a result of those.
Yeah, I have a couple of thoughts on this. So one of them is, I think we all know that even if the entire winter sports industry reduced their footprint down to nothing, we would move the needle almost nothing, right? Like I think we all, have an understanding that we as an industry and our immediate impact is limited in scope, right? And the big opportunity for us is influencing others, whether that be influencing our guests or our communities or policy change, working towards systemic change. And so I believe that as an industry that we feel, I can certainly speak for POWDR in this, a responsibility to have our house in order while we're doing that, right? And so we have then undertaken a lot of these, specific projects, exactly like you outline. We have used 100% recycled snowmaking out in Soda Springs, and we use cow power out at Killington, which I think we'll talk about a little bit more in a bit. We have the largest EV charging hub in New England. We've introduced a ride sharing app out here at Snowbird that a few other resorts have picked up on. We, use 7 million kilowatt hours of solar annually. That's both from, offsite and onsite sources. And so, for us, the important thing is really finding the right solutions locally for our resorts locally. For responsible environmental management, right? And for those carbon reductions, of course, we're going to be working toward carbon neutrality over time, right? And as everyone should be, quite frankly. But we also recognize that, as we do that, there is a much, much bigger world out there that we also have a responsibility to play in. And that is influencing those guests and our communities and our employees and policy change, so we can really make the big sweeping changes that need to be made.
Yeah, it all adds up, definitely. And I know, sometimes we look at, the number of snow guns, for example, Laura, that you might have, running at the various different resorts that POWDR operates. And Judy, you've got a smaller number, but just to give people like perspective, every snow gun counts when it comes down to this. I mean, this is, I pulled some of the numbers from a program that Efficiency Vermont did, which was called the Snow Gun Roundup. It was like a cash for clunkers program to get all of the inefficient snow guns off the market. And we did it for Efficiency Vermont, so for the state of Vermont. And then we also recently just executed the exact same statewide approach for New York as well. And just to give like folks a sense, I mean, for Vermont ski resorts alone, just removing all of those inefficient snow guns is resulting in just over 800,000 metric tons of carbon dioxide over the lifetime of the equipment. And for New York, it's close to 500,000 metric tons of carbon. So that still might seem like a small slither of what we're looking to achieve, but just that simple step of getting 2 or 3, snow guns switched out, at Judy's, Craftsbury Outdoor Center, or, Laura, for you, whether it's, like 50 or more, like all of these things, combined together make a huge impact for state goals, as well as obviously for our global climate commitment as well.
Yeah, a gun upgrade, at our resorts or across the portfolio for a year would be one of the most significant projects that we'd undertake. It's very significant. Yep.
Yeah.
Sorry,
we're way smaller. We have 3 fan guns, and then most recently we've gotten 3 of the new really super efficient ones that don't use air. That's just water, and you just need cold temperatures, and you just blow it out there. And what we're doing with that is waiting till we have really good cold temps in the wintertime and blowing a stockpile of snow that we then cover with wood chips and store over the summer. And we collaborated with a researcher at UVM on sort of studying this whole thing. It's not a new technology. It's been done in Europe for a long time, but we actually just yesterday and the day before finished putting the chips all over our pile. And so it's a more efficient time and way to make the snow. We still have our fan guns for, finishing off little areas there, but it is such an interesting contradiction. I mean, we're trying to always have skiing at Thanksgivings. That's when skiers are just so psyched on snow again, and all the college athletes need to train. And so we want to do that, but we want to do it as responsibly as we can. And so that this system of storing snow seems to be working well. And then for our other less efficient guns, it is where we collect the waste heat from the generator and use that to help heat the buildings. And so we're just trying to do it as responsibly as we can, and then honestly talk about that on our website and share that with, all of our skiers, because as Laura was saying, it's about spreading the word and getting people thinking about it. And I think, I could say, well, we're just really small, so it doesn't really matter what we do. Well, but it does, because we had 28,000 skier visits this winter or something, and so hopefully all those people are getting a little bit of the message,
Yep.
So yeah.
Absolutely. And I think, Judy, for when we were talking earlier as well, one of the key goals for Craftsbury as well is to help reduce the overall miles traveled by skiers too, by ensuring that you're providing a longer ski season, for Nordic skiers, so they're not having to go out of state or beyond. So, all of those indirect impacts also have tremendous effect. I know I'm looking at the clock here, and I know that we've got around 10 minutes left, and I would have to say I'd be really remiss if we didn't touch on some of the other fun greenhouse gases that are out there. I mean, I'm sure everyone keeps on talking about carbon, and that's the one that everyone is most familiar with, but there's a lot of other really potent gases that we all need to be concerned about, and HFCs, or hydrofluorocarbons, are definitely one of them, and they're something that's gaining a little bit more notoriety and attention in the news right now. But for those of you who aren't aware, it's HFCs are used as a refrigerant in refrigeration systems and air conditioning. So like I kind of say, if you go into your kitchen, it's your fridge, it's your freezer, it's what helps keep your house nice and cool in the summer, or it's the vending machine that gives you that nice cool drink once you've got off the slope. The biggest challenge with refrigerants is that they leak. And for those of you who are aware, who are listening, refrigerants that leak typically have a global warming potential between 4,000 and 6,000 times more potent than carbon dioxide. So it's kind of like the dirty little secret of electrification, is that we need to address leakages in our systems as well. So, with that in mind, and the fact that there are other GHGs, greenhouse gases out there as well. Laura, you mentioned cows. I can't not mention cows coming from Vermont and methane. These are some really, these are tough challenges that we have to face, but there are also some pretty cool innovations to how to address them. And I'm just curious if you guys, have got any suggestions of what you've been working on directly, or what you're going to be planning to work on.
Well, I'll jump in with the cow power story, since we're talking about cows. So the cow power story is a great. It was alignment between Killington Resort, which is in Vermont, and Green Mountain Power. And they work together, and essentially there's a system that's been developed where farms around Killington collect cow manure throughout the day, and then they mix it with a wash water, and then it's pumped into an anaerobic digester. So then that slurry flows through the digester, and then it converts, the bacteria eventually converts the manure into biogas. And then the biogas is delivered to a gas engine, which drives an electric generator, which creates electricity to power the Killington K1 gondola and the Peak Lodge that's at Killington now. So that's been, you know, that system's been going on for a number of years now, and you know, Killington was one of the first partners in that, but then I think that program has grown ever since, and certainly has been a very positive program for the Killington team. And, you know, that the gondola and the Peak Lodge, next time anyone's up there, you can know that you're being powered by that cow manure.
Cow power.
On the farm down the road.
I think that sounds like a unique advertising opportunity right there, to stick a couple of Frisian cows on the gondola as you go up instead.
Well, there's a gondola car that has that's painted with cow spots. And I will say, one of my favorite costumes that I've seen any of our team members dressed up on, the Killington team dresses up in cows every now and then and goes out and spreads the word. So.
Well, I know that, you know, Judy at Craftsbury as well. I mean, like, you've done, like, there's a couple of things. I mean, you're doing, I'm going to say, like, carbon sequestration of sorts, but, you know, I think your integration of renewable heating, as well as some of the things that you've been doing to address fluorocarbides as well, is really important. But I don't know, whereabouts are you with the ban on fluoro waxes, and can you talk a little bit more about your heating system too, because I know that's pretty new.
Yeah, well, we jumped right on the bandwagon of banning fluoros, which it was really important to us to do. It is interesting, though, to have some of the larger, like FIS and, you know, International Biathlon Union being a little bit slower to adopt that, because we do host FIS races at our center. And so in a way, it was just as well that there was a pandemic this year and we couldn't host big FIS races because we banned fluoros, you know, and I don't know if they would have let us do that. I understand, I believe they're both banning it going forward. We also, one of our races here, we tested, our technical delegate had a test sample collection for fluoros in the bottom of skis. And so that it's actually going to be sent back to Germany and tested and whatever. So we're sort of trying to help figure out how. We joke here about putting bibs on all the dogs that say fluoro sniffing dog and sending them out to run around and identify the fluoro waxes. But I don't know that we'll make that happen.
I think that sounds like yeah.
In terms of our heating system, I mean, we have a number of heating systems. The first big thing we did, as you said, our goal by 2012 was to get the whole east side of our campus off of fossil fuels. And that was where, and this is, you know, a big dorm and touring center and the garage and some cabins. And that was where we collected the waste heat from the snowmaking generator we now have 3 high efficiency wood-fired boilers that use sustainably harvested wood from our property and area properties. And we supplement with a heat pump in the summer and a bit of solar. Yeah, so it's sort of a unique and funky combined district heating system. Now, it didn't work so well to go across the road. So when we renovated kitchen dining, we went with geothermal there. And then when we renovated some of our athlete houses, which are out on the fringes, it made more sense to go with, say, a pellet boiler or something else. So in some ways, we're becoming a little library of methods and systems and improvements. And when we give our sustainability tours, which we do pretty regularly in the summer to everybody who comes to our summer camps, we have a lot of things to show them. So it's good. It feels educational.
It's a wonderful example. I was just about to say it's the Northeast Kingdom Research Center for Energy Efficiency in Action. So it's a great demonstration. And I know, you know, when I think about, obviously, you know, resorts are a little bit different from how they might be able to handle various different off gases, obviously, you know, from their systems. But Marie-Laure, you know, as a as a company that's actually manufacturing product as well. I know that Salomon's been trailblazing when it comes to, trying to reduce the overall like carbon impact of the products that it says. So, I'm curious, what should we be buying or what should we be looking for in the next ski season? What should we be putting on our feet?
Yeah, that's true. We've been really thinking hard about how to reduce the GHG emission of our products, because that's the biggest part of our emissions. And for example, we recently launched a new Nordic ski. So talking about Nordic, that's called the S-Max ski, and the core has a 45% of recycled PET from recycled bottles. And that sounds like a small improvement, and that's what we were talking about. It's really incremental work. But that took 3 years of R&D to go there, keeping the same level of performance that our consumers are expecting, and also Salomon is expecting for their own pride, actually. So that's really long-term efforts where we need engineering mindset plus innovation plus measurement. As I remember Laura was saying, data is super important to be able to actually act the right way. And on the hard goods industry, we know we lack more data than we have in soft goods in apparel industry, and that's the question we have in Salomon, because we sell both soft food and hard goods. And the other question to tackle the GHG emissions for us is really how we can act in the supply chain, because as I say, the pie is really I would say 90% of the emissions are really in the supply chain. That's a study that the European Outdoor Group showed. I'm sure the OIA is also measuring the same kind of pattern. And then the question is really how we engage with the suppliers to do all the actions, help them do these actions, and not be in this B2B relationship, a very conventional old school relationship, but how we collaborate to change what we need to be changed. Talking about HFC, for example, for Salomon, the whole FHE footprint is really also at the supplier side. So how we help them move forward, how we support that's the whole question, and how we measure first, because it's very easy to measure our own emissions, but then getting back to suppliers where it's often shared suppliers, so we don't have also the power to ask them, use this reporting, use these tools, these very heavy tools. We need a lot of imagination to be able to achieve that.
Yeah, I mean, although I'll throw an idea out here for you, Marie-Laure, because, when we talk about supply chains, I'm sure you're very familiar with, ISO 9001 that is looking at quality, quality of your product produced. That's obviously a standard that is required and audited, by individuals, through your supply chain. And as a purchaser, you can require it. And I think now as more and more companies are getting acquainted with the ISO 14001 and the ISO 50001, which is looking at energy management, I feel like this is a really valuable tool that we can potentially use to help encourage and require, like you said, like your supply chain partners to take a little bit more of a focused look at energy management and carbon management within there. So I've got my fingers crossed. If you keep on pushing from the top, I'm sure we'll have plenty of people to follow. So we have a few minutes left, and there's two kind of questions that I want to ask. And I think, the very first one is that I feel like, we can't really leave this talk really without touching a little bit on the pandemic and how the pandemic's impacted the industry. This has created a lot of change, a lot of additional like energy consumption that's been associated with necessary indoor air quality, health, safety, sanitation, but there's also a lot of opportunity as we look towards reopening our economy of how we reintroduce customers, back onto the mountains, back into our shops, back into the resorts. And I'm just curious, like a few quick, ideas that may be things that you're working on right now of what you're going to be encouraging your customers or encouraging your skiers to do when they come back to the mountains next year.
I think a lot of it is regaining the losses that we had during the pandemic. I think, we were trying more and more to encourage carpooling, and we couldn't do that, and then just the sort of waste and a lot of containers to recycle, and, you can't bring your own mug to get a hot drink at the touring center cafe, you know, that just wasn't okay. So I think a lot of it is regaining it. I think on the positive side, we had more kids than ever in our programs. And I think, you know, we couldn't hold them at first, but then we could hold them because they were outside and socially distant and carefully run. And I think they were so good for people, just extra good for people this season to get out and be outdoors and be at least distantly in contact with some friends.
Yeah, definitely an opportunity for re-educating or reintroducing old habits.
Yeah, I'd echo what Judy said, getting back what, you know, unfortunately broke a bit with a lot of respect to waste and F&B and, you know, transportation waste. And then also, you know, taking the learnings of things that worked, like not printing trail maps or using QR codes more. And then also we made a big shift into a big focus on education and advocacy this year. Because those were levers that we could keep pulling. And so continuing to, you know, take that momentum and channel that momentum forward.
Yeah. I love you calling out like the use of QR codes, the lessons learned of things that we can do more efficiently,
right?
Because we never knew we could do it.
We all hated them, but now we use them.
But now we love them because we can order in advance while we're on the ski slip. So it's all good.
Yep.
So I think we are just about at time. I did want to, like, you know, leave everybody who's been, you know, joining us for this call with one inspirational thought or hope that you guys have of where this industry is going to be in the next 10 years. I'll start with mine. Everything is electric.
I think for me, it goes back to that original vision that I had, which was taking the community and planet into account. And so with respect to the community, that means it's a more inclusive industry. And with respect to the planet, it means that this cultural shift has happened and the industry isn't afraid to speak up and incorporate responsible business actions into their day-to-day, which would ultimately enable the cultural and policy shift that we need for change at scale.
I'll say ditto to that.
Hope we still can make snow and we don't have snow, but that we have snow a lot of the time, that we can continue to have a lot of kids in our programs. We can have more and more inclusivity, diversity, which we're working on. So I really hope there aren't any big changes in terms of like snow disappearing. I want to still have it and continue to just push the envelope where we can and make our incremental improvements.
Yeah. Marie-Laure, any last passing thoughts for our audience?
Yeah, I really hope that in years from now, in 10 years from now, that the winter sports industry is going to be vocal enough, and we will have this chance to be vocal enough that we can really influence and push the needle further. And I feel with the pandemic, we had this great opportunity that people are really turning to basics, to nature, and longing for, you know, very more natural ways of being outdoor. We've got increased, you know, people turning to Nordic and to touring. So that I feel this is a great signal that we really can use to push the envelope.
Wonderful. Well, I'm going to echo a couple of comments that came in from the side, which was, you know, I can't say enough thanks for such amazing, wonderful women here joining me today on this conversation. We most certainly have to continue to hold all of our customers, our competitors, our policymakers, you know, and anybody accountable and hold their feet to the fire as we continue to tackle greenhouse gases in the winter sports. So, well, this was a very short conversation today. I'm really looking forward to continuing talking with all of you and hearing about all the amazing activities that you guys are up to and the impact that you're making across the US and in Europe. Thanks so much for joining me.